So, welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us for this evening's program. I'm Jamie Seward, Associate Director of Affinity Engagement Programs with the Office of Alumni Relations, and I'm here with our special guest, Dr. Jed Gaylin, Musical Director of the Hopkins Symphony Orchestra. And this evening, we'll have the special opportunity to listen to Symphonie Fantastique while we discuss the work with Jed. And before I turn the program over to Jed, I encourage you to ask any questions you have by typing them in the Zoom Q&A in the bottom of your screen. Jed will have time at the end to do his best to answer all of your questions. We'll also be using the chat feature tonight to share some details about the music with you. So with that, I'm going to turn the program over to Jed, and I wish all of you a lovely evening. Enjoy the show.
Great. Thanks, Jamie. So welcome. I'm glad to be here. We had such a wonderful time several weeks ago doing the Enigma variations, and we've chosen for these little mini-series 3 programmatic pieces, which by that we mean pieces that more or less tell something of a specific story rather than a completely abstract symphony like a Brahms symphony or maybe Beethoven or Mozart. So the Symphonie Fantastique, written by Frenchman Hector Berlioz in 1830. This is just 3 years after the death of Beethoven, and just 6 years or so after Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, and yet the orchestra that Berlioz is wielding is much larger, and it is fantastic, and in the literal sense of the word. I mean, this piece is all about sort of a drug trip, essentially. So to be blunt about it, that's why we called it, what do we call it, obsessions and pipe dreams or something. So we're going to have time today just to hear the first movement and the fourth and fifth movements. We'll miss the middle 2 movements, which is a shame because they're really stunningly beautiful. The second movement is a ball. It actually depicts a ball. The waltz came into vogue during the Congress of Vienna in the period 1814, around there. And so this was very much a new-ish thing and spread through Europe like wildfire. So we'll miss that. And then there's a gorgeous pastoral movement, just a sort of scene in the country with shepherd calling to shepherd, or shepherdess calling to shepherdess, however you want to see that. And I urge you to hear that on your own. You can always see this. You can always see this full symphony that the Hopkins Symphony played just a year ago on our website. So yeah, you're going to see the Hopkins Symphony playing in our performance from October of 2019. So really exactly a year ago. It seems like about 5 or 10 years ago, but that's where we are. So one of the things as I was thinking about this piece for tonight's talk is that there's always been some confusion as to whether like when the drug-induced state hits. But actually Berlioz is fairly clear about this, and I'm going to start by putting something in your chat right away. This is what he writes, and I've learned to only do little bits and snippets at a time. So you can read this: a young musician of unhealthy, sensitive nature, it's supposed to say, and endowed with vivid imagination, has poisoned himself with opium in a paroxysm of love-sick despair. The narcotic dose he had taken was too weak to cause death, but it has thrown him into a long sleep accompanied by the most extraordinary visions. All right, so that's the first part. And then he goes on further to say the following. In this condition, his sensations, his feelings, and his memories find utterance in his sick brain in the form of musical imagery. Even the beloved one takes the form of a melody in his mind, like a fixed idea, or idée fixe, as they say in French, which is ever returning and which he hears everywhere. So basically, before the symphony's even begun, he has entered, or the protagonist, it could be a he, it could be a she, it could be whatever you want. The protagonist has already put themselves into this difficult state. And I think that's kind of helpful to know, because already the first movement that we hear reflects that. So we're going to jump in without too much more talking about it. The first movement is called Reveries, Passions, and so on. We will hear, I'm going to sing this for you once just so you get an idea. The Ide fix, the melody is one that you'll hear throughout the symphony, and it's a very simple melody. It starts bum bum dee da 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 dee 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 da dee da. So it starts with a kind of surging arpeggio for those who have any music background. Dee da 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 da. And then the scale going down. He's going to do that again, but it just modulated up a fourth. Da da, sorry, a fifth. Da da dee da da dee da dee dee da da. And here's another important part that you're going to hear. It's the downward scale part. Da dee da dee da da. And in case you don't get it, he does it again. Ta-deen, ta-deen, ta-dan, ta-dan. And he does it a third time. Ta-deen, ta-dan, ta-dan, ta-dan. And a fourth time. Ta-dan, ta-dan, dum, dee, bum, bum, dee. So those are the main parts. You know, it goes on a little bit further, but dee, da, dum, ba, dum. When you hear that, you know that's the Beloved's theme. And dee, da, dee, dee. Now it starts with an introduction, and that introduction conjures up this very sort of crazy, ethereal, cosmic stew that's sort of permeated the protagonist's mind. So let's jump right in. You'll hear that right away, and I'll give you in the chat as we go. I will give you little descriptors as we go along. I'm going to be operating the screen share for myself, so you'll just have to be a little patient as I switch from speaking to screen share. Bear with me, please. Okay. Okay, can everyone hear me? I always, the webinar format is always hard because we never know what's happening until somebody sends a chat saying you've been talking for 5 minutes with your thing off. Um, so it's an incredible movement, isn't it? It's so kind of all over the place, and yet, and I think this is something that I've thought about as I've done the piece several times. um, if you if you can accentuate those things and still allow the form of it to do what it wants to do, it actually hangs together remarkably coherently, and with all this sort of schizophrenic energy and all this drug-induced energy. So yeah, it's really great. Now, as I said, we will not have time to do the second movement, but I'm wondering if anyone has any questions at this point. Go ahead and put them in the chat. I did see somebody on a Q&A, but um, the screen is black. That's because right now we're doing nothing except talking. You don't see me at all? You should see me, right? Yeah. Good. All right. So what happens in the next movement? So you've sort of seen the tracings of his sort of falling in love with and being obsessed with the beloved. He already was in love with her before he took the opium and ended up in this drug-induced sort of crazy landscape that our protagonist has entered. And the second movement is the ball, as we talked about, where the protagonist spies the beloved, and at the ball. The third movement, the protagonist tries to get some respite and goes out to the country, hears all kinds of beautiful sounds, but still doubts plague the protagonist. And so in the dream, he has dreamed that he's actually, out of obsessive jealousy, killed the beloved, and so the protagonist is being marched. It says just to the supplice in French, but it's pretty clear it's the guillotine, because at the end you'll see what happens is that he is beheaded. So we'll hear that, and then we'll take a little break between that and launching into the very Halloweenish finale. Okay, so bear with me, and I will go back to the screen share, and I will have to queue up. So hang on. You should still hear me right now. That's probably not a bad idea while I get this going to minute 3910 is what we're looking for. Okay, that's close enough. So here we go. I'm going to start it and turn off my microphone and camera. And if you haven't, please do turn off your microphone and camera when the selection's playing so we all get a better image of the piece. Okay, so that's pretty memorable. It's pretty astonishing music when you consider what had been written before then. Huge leap forward. Yeah, huge leap forward in terms of the grandiosity of music, in terms of its painting colors. The French always colorists. I think you can say that this trait goes back even into the Renaissance, that the French were particularly interested in color in a way that that was different from their, let's say, the Flemish counterparts. So very interesting, and of course we see that in painting. We see how quickly the 19th century, the French, even before the Impressionists, but even with painting at the time, like Delacroix, how interested in color and in spectacle, right? It's spectacular in the literal sense of the word. So the last movement is he's been, or the protagonist has been executed and dragged off to the tortures and torments of hell. And the protagonist is visited by the beloved in the form of a witch in the clarinet, first in the regular clarinet, and then eventually in the high piccolo clarinet, which is a little squeaky thing whose purpose is usually to sound noxious. And in fact, that's what Berlioz has done. So you'll hear the tune of the beloved. Remember in the first movement, except it's like triple timed. Bum bum blim 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 bum, like a kind of noxious jig, as you imagine the witches dancing around the protagonist in a sort of witches' Sabbath and satanic rite, so to speak. All done essentially in good fun. I mean, I don't think anyone sees this. It's a Halloween quality, but it really is a kind of just an exploration um, of uh, of crazy, frenetic colors and ideas, and the psyche, that had not really been done in music like this before, to my knowledge. All right, let's shoot ahead. We're actually queued up already, so I'll just screen share. Does anyone have any questions at this point? We'll have time at the end for sure. So why don't we jump into the finale then and go to screen share. Bear with me. So it begins with a kind of perverted Renaissance dance. The Renaissance dance means in a sort of a three, ba-da-little-dum, ba-da-little-dum, except instead of doing a nice straight scale up, ba-da-da-da-dum, he gives us a tritone, which is instead of a perfect fifth, it's called the devil in music. And you may wonder, why is it called um, I, for me to list all the music, we have a question here. What instruments were part of the performance? We can hit that afterwards, but a lot. Take a look. You can take a look while this screen is being shared. We got violins, cellos, violas. I think you can see this: violins, cellos, violas, second violins, a bunch of percussionists, bunch of French horns, trumpets here, trombone, two tubas, bells, basses, harp. So there you go. All right. Um, so instead of people wonder, why is it called a tritone? And it's because actually it's three whole steps. Dee da dee da. So that's why it's called a tritone. It's three whole steps. It divides the scale perfectly in two. Generally, Christian theology doesn't like things in two because it's divisible, like things in three because of the Trinity. So he gives us, instead of ba-da-da-da-dim, it's ba-da-da-da-dim, ba-da-da-da-dum, ba, and you hear all kinds of special effects that Steven Spielberg would have been proud of had he written them himself. All right, let me open up the chat again. Okay, here we go. We're going to start. Okay. So, um, Solito, yeah, I saw your comment about yeah, it's nice, especially to point out the instruments to people for these kinds of concerts, especially when you can tie it into what's going on with the music. Very cool. Yeah, nice to see you again. All right, so questions. We have some under the Q&A. Let's see what's going on here. Okay, which instruments were part of the orchestra? I think we answered that. Why does the bell shake so much? Where are our acousticians when we need them? It's a very, very big, long sine wave or complex sine waves because it doesn't really follow the usual overtone patterns. It's distorted, but it's a big, long thing. So that's one big vibration. It's a long thing. If you notice a bass string, also very long, it shakes a lot too. So that's why. And then again, he's whacking it pretty hard with the mallet, and you can't tamp it down because otherwise that won't allow it to ring. So it's gonna fly around a lot. It's a good question, Francis. Yeah. Other questions, comments, thoughts, reactions? Pretty cool piece, right? I wish we had time to hear the whole thing. Any comments about the orchestra or any other thoughts about any of this? I mean, nothing is nothing is off limits. Yes, thank you, Samir. The orchestra sounds great. I think you were in that one too, weren't you? Let's see if we can see you. You're there, I think, but I just don't see you covered up. Uh, hey, Barbara, nice to hear from you. I saw you'd be coming on this. That's great. Barbara is a Peabody colleague who actually goes back to our days in Cleveland, just about 5 years ago. How is the orchestra rehearsing? Very carefully. No, we're not rehearsing, I'm sorry to say. Uh, yeah, we can't. The university is shut down. New York Philharmonic has closed all performances through this season through May, and is basically saying it'll open in September. We don't know that that's our case, but it's hard. It's very hard because wind players, especially, are super spreaders, and even string players. When you're exerting, they are. Amitai, yes, I love this piece. Nice. It's so you played the two of the three movements we focused on. That's great. Yeah, good. Other questions? Yes, there are two people playing the drums, and in the fourth movement, which we didn't get to hear, there are actually four people playing the timpani all at once to simulate thunder. That had never been done in the orchestra before. There are so many firsts in this piece. I don't remember an E flat or piccolo clarinet making its appearance. Bell chimes, so many novel things in this piece. It's unbelievable. Yeah, yeah. If you think something outrageous is happening, you are absolutely right. Thank you, Leanna. Very nice. The descriptions are really in the music. Berlioz does it. So yeah. Thank you, Francis. Members are recruited. The question is, how do we recruit members? For all Hopkins students hear about it as they are enrolling. We let people know about admissions. There's always an activities fair. Um, and then generally the word is out on our website and people then apply. We usually have about 70 auditions a year or so. What was the response when this piece was first played? I think people liked it. It's funny. I'm not remembering this all of a sudden. Um, how was this piece received when it was first performed? I think people were shocked by it, but I think generally it was appreciated and liked. I could be wrong about that. I'm sure there were huge range of opinions. Yeah, our piece is really before its time. Solito saying for everyone. I don't know if you can see the question and answers or not, so I'm just sort of responding to them as they come up. Uh, yeah, Solito had mentioned to me how he loves that he's playing in an orchestra now where they do a lot of introducing the instruments, which is always really important so people understand the colors. Thanks, Terry. Uh, just a compliment on the interpretation. Good. I would urge you to go to the HSO website. I'm going to type that in here if you don't have it. It's jhu.edu/JHSO, and you can find this piece in its entirety. You can also find the Elgar Enigma variations, a bunch of other pieces there on our live streams when we've done them. Ah, UC Davis. So Terry's saying went to UC Davis and worked in the music library. Very nice. Great. I don't think that what's known about Berlioz's drug use in regard to the symphony, I think he had a very active imagination. Opium was a common thing among especially the well-to-do. That's how they just sort of calmed their nerves a lot. I don't think that they knew about it. Well, they eventually found out about its deleterious side, but I think it was a common thing, both also for pain relief. They didn't have Advil, they didn't have a lot of different things. Well, Romeo and Juliet, Berlioz, the Requiem are big pieces. Harold in Italy, big piece. Yeah, I mean, this is the big one. This is the one that people know. It's true, right? But there are other big ones. Yeah. Nice comments here, complimenting the performance. Offstage oboe, Nicolene has pointed out, yes, we have that also as a very novel approach. Okay, there's a bunch more here that I didn't see. Talk about performing in Shriver Hall renovated. Yes, it's much better, I think. First of all, it's brighter and it's a much cheerier experience, and also you can just see what's going on. The musicians can see each other better, they can see me better, but it's also, and this was just good fortune, it's also better acoustic. The sound is much more present. So it's a huge. I'm glad we got to do this piece after the hall was renovated. So that's a very good point. So the drums were dispersed on both sides of the orchestra, in part because that's how they'd fit, but also because it gives a nice sort of back and forth sort of surround sound thing on the stage, and it gives you a nice sense of geography. Thank you for the compliment. Somebody else, Karen, I can't pronounce your last name, Miraton. I watched the live stream of this last year, and it sounds as amazing as the first time. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Great. Well, Jamie, is there are there any other questions? I think
Well,
I'm
I'm
gonna
so
have,
happy that I in particular, made it through given my previous uh, challenges, but I'm so glad you all were able to join us this evening. And it looks like we're out of time. And I'd like to thank Jed Gaylin for an amazing evening. We have one more left, and you'll get information about that in the follow-up email. And we hope you join us for other programs. I know there are some town halls on tonight, so I don't want to keep anybody. Oh, I see a question. Just where on the JHU Orchestra page are the full recordings? Jed, can you answer that?
you want to go on the About section, and then under About is Media, and then under Media you'll find it. So just go to the About at the top menu bar, click on that. I think, yeah, that's the trick, is to know to go under About. Hmm.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time and your talent, Jed, and thank you all for attending this evening. And we hope to see you next time. Have a
Thanks,
nice
Jamie. It's
evening.
great to be here. Thank you all. It's really a pleasure to be
Thank
with you.
you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.